Yeah, those things. What day is it today?
I don't know, it's Monday.
It's March 14th?
No, it's not. Is it that far along?
Yeah, March 14th. Where were you born?
What?
Where were you born?
The Dry Fork of Squaw Creek.
About how many miles from Wilmore Lake is that?
Mm, 4 miles maybe. 4 or 5,
Something like that.
something around there.
What year were you born in?
December the 10th, 1922.
So that makes you 82?
Makes me 82.
82. That means this year you turn 83, but it's quite a ways off
Mm-hmm.
at this point. You don't have to worry about your birthday yet. What's it feel like to be 82?
Feel the same as I did at 22.
Yeah? Do you feel your body get rickety and all
No,
that stuff, or
it's getting better.
yeah? You reckon?
This stuff here keeps it in good shape.
You do all right with that, huh?
Mm-hmm. This stuff's what does it.
What do you remember about growing up with your brothers and sisters?
Oh, that'd take 20 years to tell all that.
Yeah. You had how many? You had
I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters.
and their names were, the oldest one was Donald, right?
No, the oldest brother was Donald.
Yeah, but not the oldest.
And me. And
Marie was the oldest.
Marie was the oldest one in the family.
Everybody.
And Nettie was the youngest.
The only ones left are you and Nettie right now.
Yeah.
How old's Nettie at this point?
She's in her 70s.
You're not quite sure how old she
was
is.
born later. A little later than there's a few years between her and Frank. But Frank was only a year behind me. I don't know just how many years it was. And she's up in 70 something. Maybe 75. '76 maybe.
Mm-hmm. Donald died when he was what, 21?
Yeah.
He was only so many days after his 21st birthday.
Yeah,
He almost died on his 21st birthday, didn't he?
that was pretty close, I think.
What ship was he on?
The Monson, I think.
The Monson? It was
a destroyer.
a destroyer? What year was he killed?
I don't know what year it was. It was pretty early in the war, though. One was Pearl Harbor. That was in 41.
41, yeah.
Frank. So he might have been 42 or close to, well, if it was after, probably in 42 when he got killed. Because he hadn't been in there too long. He's out in,
So Donald was killed probably just a year into the war?
yeah. He wasn't there too long.
He was brought home in a sealed casket? Was he pretty badly...
I don't know.
You don't know? Did you already volunteer by that point?
You don't even know if it was
Donald
him
him.
or not.
Really?
That's for sure.
You wonder about that?
You don't. They just sent somebody here in a casket. he got buried.
Yeah. Did the ship sink?
I don't know if it did or not.
What year did you go into the war yourself?
Oh, 40, 43, I guess.
43. You said you went down to Louisiana for training, for
Yeah.
basic training.
Spent the summer down there.
Yeah. How many weeks was that?
Then I went to, well, I had to figure that out. I was down there 5 or 6 months. I don't know what it was.
That long, really?
Yeah. Then ended up, I was in England by New Year's that year.
By 44?
The New Year, yeah, 44, 45, wait a minute. When was the war over? Was it 45 or 46?
45, I think. But
45. Hell, I must have been 42 then. 'Cause I was in England a year, and then I was in France and Germany for 6 months before
before it was finished?
4 or 5 months before it was over.
What did you do when you were in England?
Nothing. Checked all the pubs.
Yeah.
I was a pub checker.
What was your official job?
We had depots for shipping materials and stuff around. All kinds of supplies. We even had moved a lot of trucks, big vehicles and small ones.
A quartermaster? Is that what you were doing?
No, we were engineers. I
Hmm.
was in the 1302 engineer department.
Did
at
you?
that time.
You said you used to ride around on a motorcycle once.
Yeah, I rode a motorcycle in England. But I was a dispatch rider.
Mm-hmm. Taking messages around.
Taking you out. They didn't have these computers then to do all that stuff. So you had to take papers from one place to another. Dispatch rider.
So you did that for about a year, you say?
Well,
Engineer and dispatch rider and different
yeah,
things.
That, the whole thing. It was a year.
You didn't go over on D-Day, though. You came after.
Oh yeah, after D-Day.
Mm-hmm. What did you do when you went to France?
Well, well, after D-Day, our 1302 engineers wasn't anymore. Too long.
What did they turn it into? Or you guys were all swallowed up by some other unit?
So we got shipped out. I ended up over in France in the 3rd Infantry Division. But I was pretty lucky I got in the headquarters company.
3rd Infantry did a lot of fighting, didn't they?
Probably did more fighting than any other outfit in the war.
They started out North Africa,
They
I think,
landed
didn't
in
they?
North Africa. Ran Rommel out of the desert down there. Then they landed in Sicily. Then they landed in Italy. Anzio beachhead was Italy. That was a big one. They lost a lot of people there. I don't know how many divisions they went through. They went through a lot of people. Then they landed again in southern France and came all the way up through France and
Mm-hmm.
picked me up.
Pick you up.
Picked me up at the Colmar Pocket.
Did they land at D-Day, the 3rd Infantry?
No,
No, they came afterward.
well, after maybe about the same time, I think, in France. They'd been in Italy already before. But then they moved on then they picked me up at Colmar, and then after that went into Germany. And they had the Siegfried line that was supposed to be you couldn't get through, that the Germans had put in. That was for the next, they thought they had that protected, but we had these big guns behind us, and we'd lob over there and blow up their pillboxes they had made up with those big guns. Then we had airplanes. By that time we were getting air superiority. Where the Germans didn't have much air stuff left by then. So we could call up air support most of the time, and then you could.
Well, that stuff, the air raids were directed by the troops on the ground then.
No, not the big air raids.
But some of it.
Well, the big air raids were going on when I was in England.
Yeah. That preceded the invasion then.
Oh yeah, a long time. Almost a whole year I was in England. We had sent. There was a steady stream of airplanes. British were going. Was going. I forgot how it was. British went in the daytime and we went at night, I think, or the other way around. But it was that sky was full of airplanes. But then the buzz bomb came along. That was a pretty interesting thing. They sent those buzz bombs in, the Germans were, for a while, and they got where they could shoot those down pretty good. And then they got the VT rocket. That was the first.
Well, the V2?
The Germans had the first rocket that was ever shot. Those were the V2s. And they were sending those into London quite a bit. And that was the first time they'd ever seen anything go that fast. Everything else would come in just kind of with a motor on it. And there wasn't very many jets, and they were all propeller planes.
The Germans had the only jets then.
Germans had some jets.
Not very many, though, I
Not
guess.
very many. But then those V2s, that shook up. I know when the buzz bombs started coming into London, they bombed London a lot before the Germans had, early in the war. And but they had them pretty well shut off from bombing. You could get them once in a while, but they had it pretty well protected from the German airplanes when I was there. And we didn't get too much. There was a few times we had to get out at night and get in the foxhole or something because of an air raid.
You had to get out in the foxhole a lot when you were over in Europe, though, didn't you? Or some, at least.
No, we never did. In Germany, in France, so I say I was almost across France when I got mixed up into the 3rd Infantry. Colmar Pocket's pretty close to the German border. There was one thing that they declared Colmar as an open city. When the 3rd Infantry come in, the Germans got out and gave it to them. Not a shot was fired because of the Germans had some gases and stuff stored there. They didn't want to blow that up.
Who made that decision?
I don't know. Probably the Germans. They knew they were whipped by then anyway, pretty much.
Yeah, once the D-Day was successful, you'd see
Oh,
the
yeah.
end, huh?
They knew they were pretty well whipped, I think. So they declared Colmar an open city, and it was. I was only there a couple of days, and then we went on into Germany. And after that, we'd get. But another thing, I was pretty lucky to get in the 3rd Infantry Division. You got in there was a few people. There's probably quite a few of them, but there was a few right in where I was, in the same outfit I was in, that had landed in North Africa and been all the way through. And they knew what war was all about. So anytime you got anything that acted like war or anything, they knew what to do, and they knew when to do it and how to do it. And they saved a lot of lives, those guys. They were experienced.
They shared their experience then.
Yeah. They tell everybody else what to do and how to do it, and they knew what was.
How long was it after the war that you were back in Colorado? Did you stay in Europe for a little while, or were you?
Yeah, I was there for. Well, that ended in. Was it June? June 6th, I think it was, when the war ended. And I was there till January, or Christmas. I was still there at Christmas. In fact, I even went to Berlin in occupation. But we ended up in Salzburg, Austria. That's where the war was over.
What were you doing in Salzburg? What sort of move was going on?
That's where we were when
Just
it was over.
Fighting the whatever German army was
Well,
still resisting, or
there wasn't any resistance there. They just, in fact, there they had loudspeakers, and they even flying with airplanes loudspeakers, telling all the German soldiers to. They had to play a park, big park there, good sized area. Tell them all to come there and bring their guns with them. They had that park full of guns, where they bring their guns and put them in a pile. They had a big pile of guns there. And that was over.
what'd you do when you came back to Colorado?
Party.
For a little while, or?
No, I went to Leadville. Pretty much went to work in the mine. Of course, I'd worked at Climax before the war started. I was up there for a few months. In fact, I was in Leadville I was working in Climax when Pearl Harbor. I was in Leadville the day Pearl Harbor got hit.
What was that like when Pearl Harbor got hit?
Well, that was pretty bad.
I mean, didn't people expect to get into the war at some point, or was it that people hoped that it would
Well,
never happen?
I think our government, and a lot of the government part, they wanted to get in, but they couldn't really, because I don't think the people wanted them to. But Pearl Harbor got them in anyway, whether they wanted to or not. I think they probably knew, I don't know, but I think they probably knew that the Japanese were that close to Hawaii that they could fly in there and bomb it. they didn't have all the stuff then that they do now.
Radar didn't even exist then, did it?
No,
At least not in a way where you could use it.
but they had airplanes, a lot of airplanes. They could fly around a lot.
When did you start? You skied when you were little, but when you came back, you went to Aspen at some point. When was that?
Well, that was later after Leadville.
How long did you
I went
work
to
in?
Leadville and I skied. That's about the first skiing I ever done was right out of Leadville.
Yeah, because you only skied on kind of cross-country stuff when you were small, didn't you?
Oh yeah, just homemade skis,
Big
mostly
old-
cross country.
Your dad made skis for you, or did you make them?
Well, he made them and we try to make them ourselves too. Whittle out some wood and stuff. You didn't have edges. You put some paraffin on them, canning wax with a hot iron, make them slide pretty good. Stuff like that. But you just had a piece of strap across the toe to go with. You didn't do any turning with them.
Just went straight, huh?
But I got my first pair of skis in Leadville, and those were metal skis too. I don't know who made them, but they had them in, it was Bill's Sport Shop in Leadville. I got a pair of skis, boots, and poles.
What did you ski on? At Ski Cooper then?
Ski Cooper and Climax. Climax had a little lift up there.
Oh, they did.
Yeah. Then you go over to Arapahoe Basin opened up about that time, pretty close to that. I went over there once or twice. Then Aspen was going in. They opened up, and I was over in Arapahoe Basin. I think it cost $1 a day for a ticket. Maybe it was $1.50 or something. I don't know, something like that. And anyway, when I was over there, I heard that Aspen had opened up for skiing, but the ticket was $4 a day, and that was pretty outrageous for then.
They're still on top today, aren't they?
Yeah. That was pretty wild. $4 a day it cost to go skiing.
When did you actually go to Aspen?
Well, I was about 48, I guess, when I first went to Aspen. And stayed. I went there a little bit, and then I didn't stay. I went. One summer, I went down to Rifle and worked in the uranium plant that summer, and went up to Rifle, back to Aspen and skied that winter, and I just pretty much stayed in Aspen after that. That was for damn near 10 years, I guess, 48.
So you said you spent 10 years in Aspen.
Yeah, off and on, pretty much 10 years about.
How long was Pete Seibert there for?
Just a ski bum.
Was he there when you got there? Or
Yeah, he was there before me.
So he was a big-time ski bum as well.
No, he wasn't really ski bumming so much. He was there for 2 or 3 years, I think, and then he went to Europe and went to school. Hotel school, I think it was.
Well, he was gone for a while when you were there?
Yeah, off and on. He went different places.
He went away and came back.
Yeah, but he spent quite a bit of time up there.
What was Aspen like when you first got there?
Well, like an old mining town.
It didn't have that ski area feel yet, or more like an old mining town feel?
Yeah, pretty much. There wasn't too much. You know, it's probably the only. You could. Well, the town was pretty much the same. I mean, as it had been for years. It hadn't changed much. And it didn't change much, too much. The town didn't for a long time. As far as the buildings and all that stuff, they all stayed about the same. But everything else changed. Well, the Hotel Jerome, that was there before Aspen. I mean, before the skiing. And I think it changed quite a bit, pretty fast. It was pretty much of about the only hotel in town, really.
Go. How long were you in Aspen before you started thinking about doing Vail? Well, actually, you didn't think about Vail then, did you? You just thought about...
Yeah, I thought about Vail when I was up in Leadville, in Kokomo, in the mine. But I never, when I was up in, working in Kokomo, which is almost on Copper Mountain, just up, it's all gone now, Kokomo, the old town. Well, it was Kokomo and Racine. There was two towns there. And I worked in the mine there. And that's after I had my skis. And I always thought Copper Mountain looked pretty good from down on the road. So one day from Kokomo, I went around, traversed around the hill, from Kokomo up to the top of Copper Mountain. Then I skied down the front side of Copper Mountain. I probably made the first ski tracks on Copper Mountain. Now that I think about it. Then I hitchhiked back to Kokomo.
How far was that?
Hitchhiking was pretty easy then.
Yeah, people trusted you?
Huh?
People trusted you?
Well, I think everybody trusted everybody then. There wasn't that many cars on that road anyway. If a car come along, you got a ride.
So you made tracks on Copper Mountain, but then when did you begin to investigate Vail?
Well, at that time I was looking. Then started looking at, started thinking about Beaver Creek. And that came along about, that was after I went to Aspen. I'd looked, you'd drive by, I thought that what they call Gold Peak now, in Aspen, in Vail. I looked at that some and I thought that might make a pretty good ski area. Before, and then I'd been up to Elk Creek before and seen the back moles of Vail. You could probably hunt elk up there at that time.
And you remembered that from when you were growing up?
Mm-hmm. I wasn't even thinking about those making good ski slopes at that time, but then I remembered them and I thought about them. Trying to figure out all these years when all this stuff happens. I went to Aspen. Well, I was starting to dream about finding a ski area about that time when I was working in Climax or Leadville and Kokomo. In fact, I probably made more money in my life right there in Kokomo than I ever made in my life. I was working in the mine in Leadville for the American Smelting and Refining, and I don't know how it happened, but I ended up over in Kokomo on a contract. They was sinking a shaft 500 feet deep. And we were working contract work. We had a boarding house there, and they had free board and room. And I was getting more than $1,000 a month. I know, yeah, more than that, quite a bit. Anyway, after I worked 1 month, I went down to Denver and bought a brand new Jeep for $1,400. Paid cash for it. That was something.
You liked doing that, didn't you?
Yeah. And now, you'd have to make quite a bit of money to go pay cash for a Jeep now.
What were you making when you worked, when Vail was going? Say on a weekly or a monthly basis?
What, in the beginning of Vail?
Yeah.
Well, before Vail, I was getting about $300 a month. And I was living in the ranch house over there before Vail started. I was just hauling people up the hill and trying to sell the place. That was about enough to get by.
Once it got started, did you make any more? Or?
I was getting about $700 a month when Vail started.
So you made more per month digging a hole in the ground, working hard at
Yeah.
manual labor,
Mm-hmm.
than you ever got per month out of Vail.
Well, pretty close to that. No, it wasn't that. It was a lot more compared to what everything else cost. That's what I was trying to say about the Jeep.
So things got more expensive.
Oh yeah. Well, when wages go up, everything else does. It's now, if you was working in that mine and you want to buy a new Jeep, you'd have to be making about $10,000 a month. More than that.
Just the way things worked.
Yeah. That's how it's changed.
How expensive was life when you were making $700 a month at Vail?
Well, it wasn't too bad there because I had a house to live in. And just groceries, mostly.
Groceries were expensive, weren't they, in the mountains at that time?
Oh, no, they weren't that bad. They had well, it wasn't a supermarket, but it was a pretty good market in Minturn that had been there quite a while.
That wasn't hugely expensive?
Hmm?
It wasn't hugely expensive?
Oh, no. Well, it was probably expensive compared to right now. Even like groceries might be cheaper compared to what people make now than what it was then.
So you made $700 a month. That's the most you ever made when you were working, doing the Vail thing?
Yeah, about that. Well, when I retired from Vail, I was making quite a bit more than that.
Yeah. But this was back in,
Yeah.
what year was it when you were probably making 700 a month, approximately?
Well, Vail opened in '62. He started. That's about when I started getting 700 a month. But then after we got Vail going, then they put. I don't know how that happened. The Purgatory, which is Durango Mountain now. Purgatory, they needed a lift built, and I'd had experience because I'd built lifts in Aspen too. Then I built the lifts in Vail, and a few years after Vail went in, I went down to Purgatory. I don't know how that happened, but I made about $1,000 a month that summer working for Purgatory. I probably should have made more. I should have got a better deal out of that, but I didn't. But they got a lift and they got going.
Where was that after you left Vail, or that you did the Purgatory
I
thing?
wasn't working for Vail at that time.
You were or you weren't?
I was still working at Vail, yeah, oh yeah, when I went down to Purgatory. But Vail wasn't doing too much right at that time. That was about 2 or 3 years after Vail. No, a little more than that. 3 or 4 years. But Vail they wasn't building any lifts then or anything. It just kind of going along about that time.
They weren't making very much money, or they were making just enough?
Well, they were getting by. But the deal come up, I don't know. I was still working for Vail when I went down there.
What year did Vail take off? Really, I mean, what year did it finally start to turn the corner and succeed?
Oh, I don't know. Didn't take too long. It just kind of moved along, kept inching up all the time. Really.
You were gone. What year did you leave?
God, I don't know. Those years are hard to figure out. I mean, you can't remember those kind of stuff.
It started in '62, and you were there for a little while, right?
Oh, yeah.
Which lifts did you build?
Oh, I built quite a few. Well, I worked on I didn't do too much on the first gondola, some. But then I built 2 chairlifts that year, on the first year. Then we built that was after Purgatory. We built 3 chairlifts one year. That was chair 1. And I rode that one the other day with my ski bike. Chair 1. That's the only one left of the original lifts. They've all been changed.
Yeah, this is 2005 now.
Yeah, but that lift's still working.
That was, you built 2 chairlifts the first year. What year did you build chair 1 the first year then, or the second?
No, it wasn't chair 1. It was chair 4,
Mm-hmm.
which is chair 4 now. It's from Mid-Vail to the top of the mountain. And we built a gondola from the bottom to Mid-Vail the first year, and then we built a chairlift onto the top of the mountain. Then we built chair 5, comes out of the back bowl to the top of the mountain. Chair 5's still there, but it's just changed, got changed from the original lift to a bigger lift for more capacity. And it'll get changed again one of these days. They've been talking about it, to a bigger capacity.
How many lifts did you build at Vail, do you think?
Well, it was about 6, I guess. Yeah, 6 lifts.
Did you draw up the... Who laid out the lines for the list? Did you do that, or
Oh, sometimes, some of them.
with that old axe handle method that you use when you lay out
Well, no.
boundaries for...
You just use a compass. Use a compass to figure out about where the line was. But for the gondola, the first gondola in Vail, I had it pretty well marked out where the line would go, and then got Jerry Pestman up there to survey it, and he bragged about how accurate I was with the compass. When he surveyed, he stayed right on my line
with the transit.
with the transit. He used to talk about that.
That first gondola was how many feet was that?
Well, it was from the bottom up to Mid-Vail. That's 10,000 feet, I guess, somewhere around there.
Did you lay out the other lift lines? That
Oh yeah, a lot of them. Sort of. You still gotta get them surveyed to get because you gotta get all the little dips and hollows and all that stuff in there. You gotta get them surveyed and then get the survey so they can figure out where to put lift towers and different things.
and then you worked on building those things too, didn't you?
Yeah.
Was that a rush to get that stuff done?
Oh no, never a rush. It was the first year. You might call it a rush because we did something that had never been done before anywhere. I think when we put in the gondola and 2 chairlifts in 1 year.
Were you burning through money at that point, do you think?
At that point, I think we had $1.5 million raised to do that with. And now, one chairlift now would cost, of course they're a lot different, but it costs $2 million just to put one chairlift in now.
Maybe more.
But the chairlifts are a lot different. There's a lot more to them than there used to be.
So the $1.5 million, that came from A lot of different people?
And I think today, I think most of the chairlift companies nowadays put their own lifts in. They install them too. They don't just sell them, they install them.
Oh, that's all they did back then was sell them.
Oh yeah.
So
You
when,
just had to buy the lift, and it's up to you to get it in.
so you had to know how much cable and
Oh, well, they knew all that. I mean, they had all that for you. But you had to do it.
did they lease the heavy equipment that you needed to get the
No,
job done, or
no.
did you get that from somewhere else?
You had to do that yourself.
Were you the in charge of the construction then? The 3 lifts that went in, the 2 lifts and the gondola?
Yeah, pretty much.
Was there anybody else who knew how to do that stuff around at that time?
Not too much. They had one guy on the gondola that knew some about it. And he was there most of the summer.
And he did a lot of the gondola work when
Yeah.
you were busy doing the other 2 lifts at that time.
Well, I had a pretty good bunch of local people that knew what work was. They lived around here, and they knew how to work.
You were making $700 a month the whole time you were doing this.
Yeah, about that.
Did you get any kind of a bonus when it was finished and the season started?
No, not in the beginning, and never, because there wasn't any bonus. There wasn't any money to be given bonuses with. So I said $1.5 million is all we had, and then I had to get that thing open.
What did Vail's first lift tickets go for?
$4 or $5.
$5. So you were $1 higher than Aspen.
Yeah, $1 higher than Aspen.
But you had to have $5 lift tickets.
Yeah, we had $5 lift tickets first year. I think that, let's see, when did the tickets go up? Maybe they went up a little the second year. Maybe I forgot just how that was. I know the first year was $5.
Did you get a lot of people come the first year to ski?
But the thing is, Vail was $5, but you see, Arapahoe Basin was open, and Loveland was open at that time. You see, there was nothing. Copper Mountain wasn't there, and Breckenridge wasn't there. So there was only those 2 areas really. Well, Winter Park was there, was open then. So there wasn't too much competition in skiing at that time.
Was Winter Park owned by the city of Denver back then?
Yeah, pretty much, sort of. I don't know just how. In fact, I don't know if anybody knows how that thing was all working. Like Winter Park had been there quite a while.
So you did the first 3 lifts. You put 2 lifts in a gondola the first year. And then the second year, did you put more in the next summer?
Oh no, it was 3 or 4 years later when we put the next group in.
How many lifts did you put in then?
3 of them, 3 chairlifts.
3 chairlifts. What numbers were they?
What today is chair 1, 2, and chair 3. Chair 3 is still, and 2. Well, chair 1 goes up, but it's still there, the same lift.
Mm-hmm. Did you draw up the plans?
Chair 2 has been changed a couple of times.
Did you draw up the plans for where all the lifts would go so that you
No,
knew those numbers that
well,
ahead of
wasn't
time?
Wasn't any plans to it. You just go out there and figure where your top terminal and your bottom terminals be, and then survey between the two.
For instance, I mean, in the early days, how large an area did you see Vail as becoming?
Well, smaller than it is now. I mean, bigger than it. I'd seen it then bigger than it is now. It hasn't. It hasn't reached everything yet.
So
It's got a ways to go.
in 2005, it still has a ways to go,
Hmm.
even with the addition of the Blue Sky Basin and all that stuff.
Yeah, Blue Sky Basin's got some more to go.
How many chairlifts did you originally project would
Well,
have to be?
I never. Then you didn't do it by chairlifts. You just figured that this area'd be good skiing, that area'd be good skiing. The whole thing.
This is from looking at a topo map or from being out there looking around on your...
Well, I'd be out there looking around mostly. You look at topo maps, but they work pretty good. They got those things pretty good now. They're pretty accurate. But there's quite a bit of stuff that can be developed yet. In fact, you could finish developing, Game Creek out of Minturn. That's the upper part of Game Creek's been developed for a long time, but the lower part, they haven't. People ski it all the time. In fact, I don't know how many people go down there every day. If they'd count them, there's quite a bunch of them. And that'll be developed someday. Then at the same time, we was looking at Vail, I was looking at Beaver Creek. That's one thing about when I went to Aspen, I kind of had dreams of finding a new ski area and always looking at something. And when I got to Aspen, I found out pretty quick that I wasn't the only one that was dreaming of finding a new ski area. A lot of those ski bums over there were doing the same thing. Like Pete Seibert was one of them, and Dick McCrudden was one, and Lefty McDonald was one. Me and Lefty climbed up Vail Mountain and Beaver Creek, and we had big plans of, while I was in Aspen the first years or two, looked out of Leadville. I thought about that quite a bit. Over on Mount Massive, we went over there and climbed up that quite a bit. In fact, I even had a permit from the Forest Service to build a ski area up there. Then all you had to do was go in the Forest Service office and fill out a paper, and you had a permit. But you still had to prove that you could do it. You had the money to do it and all that. It's a little different now.
So who filed the permit for Vail?
I did. Well, me and Pete filed the one for Vail mostly. For Vail, really. But I'd filed, up on Vail Pass, I'd filed one. And then looked at it. And I never did, let's see. No, I didn't file anything on Beaver Creek. But I went up Beaver Creek. Me and Lefty McDonald went up Beaver Creek with the Forest Service, and then I went up there with the Forest Service guy again another time without Lefty, and then we went. But we never filed any permit on it. Of course, the main reason you couldn't about Beaver Creek, there was a lot of private land down there that you had to cross to get to it. So that made it a little tougher.
There was private land at the bottom of Vail, though, at the beginning, wasn't there? That sheep pasture land and whatnot.
Oh yeah, but it's right at the bottom. But you didn't have to cross a lot of private land to get to it. Like that whole valley where you go up now, even the lower part of Beaver Creek's all sitting on private land up in there, see? That was all private land. And to do some skiing up there, you had to get the hold of that private land. That was the only drawback on Beaver Creek, mostly.
Is that why Beaver Creek came later, as far as that goes?
Yeah, pretty much. Because you'd had to do it, to sell it to somebody, you'd had to get enough money to buy that private land, which would have been, at the price of it today, it would have been really cheap. I mean, it is. But you'd had to get the private land. But the thing is, with the Forest Service had a right of way up through there, and there was a road up there. You could drive up there in the summertime and drive all the way. See, you could drive clear to Beaver Lake for a long time because they cut a lot of timber up in there. And bought it out that way. But you could get through there, but to go up there and build a ski area, you'd have had to get that private land and trying to sell that to somebody. And where Vail was just that, well, Vail ended up with that private land later, which was 5,000 acres of private land that and then they sold it back to the Forest Service, a lot of it.
Did you make the original plans for Beaver Creek Mountain? The original ski area plans?
Not too much. I worked up there in the first year before it opened.
Did you do anything as far as deciding where any of the lifts might go when it got started, or?
No, not too much in Beaver Creek.
Some, or what's not too much?
I talked about it quite a bit with different people, different things.
Just general ideas about where
Oh yeah,
maybe lifts could be located, but
it's like you
nothing too specific.
with any area. Yeah, it's about what you think about.
So it was more advisory.
But for a lift, you have to go out there and look at the land and look at find out where you can put a terminal site. You can't just put a terminal on a lift anywhere. You got to have a pretty flat spot for it.
So that actually was a lot of work to do that, to actually decide where to put a lift and to go and put one together. That's a lot of work, and if you know ahead of time that you can't do that too much private land made that impossible, it wasn't worth doing that work.
Well, it's too much private land. You're trying to get that much private land and that you'd have to get to develop the ski area, because you got to get across that private land. That would be tough to sell to somebody. And the only way you could do it, you had to sell that thing. That's where Pete come in. He had a few contacts. He could sell. He found people with money that he could get interested in doing it. Of course, he started Loveland Basin, see. Just like I say, he was ski bumming in Aspen just like everybody else over there. And then he went to Europe and went to school, and then he came back here, and then he was dreaming all the time of finding a new ski area.
So when you went to Pete with the idea of Vail, he was working at Loveland at the time.
Yeah, and then when he came back from Europe, he got these people from Texas interested in, that had some money, interested in Loveland. He got that going. And at that time, I was still working in Aspen part of the time, not too much. But in Aspen, you had to work I worked on construction and different things in Aspen in the summer. Because in the summer, Aspen didn't do very much. A little bit later, after a few years, they built a couple more lifts and stuff. But then Pete got these guys from Texas. What the hell was that guy's name? Anyway, he got them interested in that up there, and I'd got into uranium prospecting in the summertime, and well, I had uranium up on Gold Peak and over in the Northeast Bowl in Vail. I was up there kind of looking for skiing and uranium prospecting at the same time.
It's over.